So the basic idea of this game, we're going to program the apple to make clones of itself that drop from the sky, and you catch them in the bowl, which can be controlled by the left and right arrow keys. Let's set up the bowl first. When the sprite is clicked, forever, we're going to use an if-then conditional statement. If key space is pressed and change space, I can duplicate this now for right. The next block that we're going to use is we're going to change x by. If we move along the x-axis, we're moving horizontally. We move in this direction to the right, we're moving in a positive direction. This direction to the left is a negative direction. So if I'm moving left, I'm moving negative, and I'm going to use 5 as my value. Turning right, moving in a positive direction. So when the green flag is clicked, the program will forever check if the keys are being pressed, the left and the right arrow keys. So the green flag, and I can move the bowl by pressing on the left and right arrow keys. The apple is a little bit more complicated. We have to set up a clone. It's important to understand the dimensions of the scratch stage. It's a 4-quadrant coordinate plane. 480 by 360 measured in pixels, where 1 pixel is 1 move step. 0, 0, the x and the y value in the center of the stage. The x-axis runs horizontally and the y-axis runs vertically. On the x-axis, if we move in a positive direction, we're moving right, and there's 240 to the edge, and moving left in a negative direction, 240 to the left. The x-axis, 180 up and minus 180 down. Sprites can be positioned using the go to x and y block, giving values for x and y. When building our clone game, we need to be thinking about not positioning our sprite right on the edge. If we gave this sprite these coordinates, x 240, y 180, the sprite's going to be on the very edge of the screen, and when it drops from the sky, it's going to be touching the edge and it's going to be half off the screen. Instead, we would want to position it a little bit further in from the side and down from the top. Let's take a look at that in Scratch. So let's take a look at the clone blocks. In a similar way to broadcasting, there are 2 blocks that work hand in hand. First of all, a clone needs to be made, and then when the clone is made, we can then program where it starts, how it moves, what it does when it touches other objects or the edge. So there's 2 parts to this block sequence. Let's get set up. When the green flag is clicked, we don't want to see the apple sprite, so we'll hide it. Then forever, create a clone of myself. Now if we leave it like this, there'll be too many apples falling from the sky, so a wait block in here is used, and you can change this value. Then we need to be thinking about what's going to happen when the clone is created. So the first thing to do is to think about the go-to and the x and y values. Because our clone is falling from the top of the screen and going down, we want to use a random x position so that it falls anywhere from left to right. So our y value is going to remain constant. If we use 180 here, our apple is going to start on the edge, and that's going to be a problem which you'll see in a moment. I recommend that you bring that down and start it at about 160. You could even come down as low as 150 or 140. Now our x value. We're going to use a pick random block. You can drag a block inside another block. So if I just drag this over to here, you can see the white glow around the outside of the x value, and I can drop that in there. In the same way as the y value, we don't want the apple to be half off the screen, so we would like it to start inside the screen. So a good number to start with is minus 220, and all the way across over to this side, 220. Next, we want to set the size. So I'm going to make this 80%. Then we want to show. So at the moment, this block of code is creating clones, and this block of code is setting up the position and the look, and in a moment, how it moves. The next block of code we're going to be using is a repeat until. So we're going to repeat a falling motion, which is changing y by a negative amount, until it either hits the edge or hits the bowl. Now the motion that we're going to be doing is to change y. So we're changing y because it's falling vertically. Down, it's in a negative direction, -5. The block that we need to put into here to repeat until is an operator, and it's an or, because we're going to have two sensing blocks in here. One of them on edge and the other one touching the bowl. We're going to bring two of these out. And in the same way as I put the pick random into the go to block, I can do the same thing in here. So I wait and see the white glow, and then this one is the bowl. I'll put this one in here. So repeat until touching the edge or the bowl. Change y by 5, and then delete the clone. So I've clicked on the green flag and nothing at all is happening. So right now, even though I've set it at 80%, it's still being created and touching the edge. So as soon as the clone is being created, it's deleting itself and we're not even getting to see it. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to try setting the size a little bit smaller. And that's worked now. If I want my apple a little bit bigger, I can put it back to 80%, but I'm going to have to bring in my values. And I could bring this one down to 150. To set up a scorer, we need to create a variable. I click Make a Variable. I can call it Score. Click OK. When I create a variable, I get 4 blocks of code that I can use. The first 2 are the ones that we're going to be using. When you create a scorer, it's very important that at the start of the game, when the green flag is clicked, the score is reset back to 0. So I'll put that one in there. The next block that we want is the change score by 1. And this is either going to add or subtract from the score total depending on your gameplay. We want that to happen if the apple touches the bowl. So let's go back to another conditional statement. If then. If touching the bowl, change score by 1. And place that underneath the repeat until block. And you can see the score changing. So the next thing we can do is we could set up a timer. Again, I'm going to go to Data and make a variable. Click OK. I'm going to set up a 60-second countdown timer and set up so that the game stops when the time gets to 0. So when the green flag is clicked, we want to set the timer to 60 seconds. We're going to use change timer by -1. We're also going to use a wait block. So these 2 blocks together are going to reduce 60 by 1 every second. Rather than a forever loop in this case, I'm going to use a repeat block and repeat that for 60 seconds. I'm going to use stop all, and that'll stop all the clones and freeze the game. Okay, so I'm going to set up a second clone. See, as a rocket is quite large, I'm going to have to reduce its size, but I already have my code sequences for creating a clone in the apple, and I'm just going to drag and drop those. I don't need to set the score to 0, that's already happening. So I want the rock to fall in the same kind of way as the apple, but if it touches the bowl, it's going to be a negative point. 80% is going to be too big, so I'm going to try 60. They're falling from the sky, but there's no randomness about it. I'm going to use some pick random blocks to make the rock behave in a bit more of a random way. I'm going to drag one into here and pick random between 2 and 3 seconds. I'm also going to put one into set size and pick random between 40 and 60%. And finally, I'm going to pick random between -2 and -4. That way, the rock will fall very differently to the apple. Have some fun.